Hi everyone, I'm Kevin Hu. On this month in Datadog, I'm joining Jeremy to chat about gaining visibility into your datasets throughout the entire data lifecycle with Datadog Data Observability. That's on the latest episode of This Month in Datadog.
Hello, and welcome to This Month in Datadog, where we update you on our latest features, product announcements, events, and more. This month, we're switching gears from our usual roundup of new releases to bring you insightful conversations with folks from Datadog product and engineering. First, Tristan joins us to discuss saving time and effort when you're on call with Bits AI SRE. We also dive into the biggest problems his team wants to solve for engineers. After that, Kevin joins us to chat about gaining visibility into your data sets throughout the data lifecycle with Datadog Data Observability. We also discuss data as a new area of focus for Datadog, the concept of lineage, and why this space is important right now. But before we get to those, we want to shout out Datadog's engineering blog. The engineering blog is where Datadog engineers share how they've solved interesting, deep technical challenges. A couple of recent posts are about building reliable log delivery to thousands of unpredictable endpoints and unwinding a shared database at Datadog scale. It's a great resource for learning something new or just getting inspired. You can find the engineering blog on Datadog's website, and we'll include a link to the blog in this video's description. As always, be sure to subscribe to our channel, and while you're at it, give us a like, drop us a comment, or send us an email with your questions or suggestions. Now, let's get to my conversation with Tristan.
So the moment you're paged, Bits jumps right into action. In this case, we were paged because an endpoint on our flight query API is experiencing high latency. Bits will start its investigation by gathering context about the alert from your Datadog environment, your runbooks, and from lessons learned from previous investigations, all in under a minute. And like you or me, Bits is pulling related telemetry from your logs, metrics, traces, and more. All right, check this out. This is the really cool part. Now, based on its initial findings, Bits will then generate a variety of hypotheses to what it thinks the problem could be, and then go verify each one of them concurrently.
Tristan, thank you so much for joining. So this year at Dash, you announced Bits AI SRE, which helps on-call engineers autonomously solve or respond to alerts and solve some problems. It's been a while since I've been on call myself. So can you tell us, before we get to what the product does, a little bit about the problem you're trying to solve?
We live in a very interesting time because observability has never been better, yet DevOps jobs and SRE jobs haven't gotten any easier. Systems are continuously getting more complex. There's just more to look at. So it's even harder to make those connections, especially when you're on call. So that's really kind of the problem that we're trying to solve here. Basically, we're trying to use AI to kind of look across your entire system for problems and trying to find the root cause, and quickly. So essentially, we're trying to find the holy grail of observability. We want to answer that classic question. You got paged at 2 a.m. and we want to answer it with, you got paged at 2 a.m., you look at your phone, and Bits has the root cause right there. And this goes for both, easy problems and hard problems. So alerts where the problem's like a nil pointer and it's obviously there. So we want to be able to Bits to help with that. So kind of reduce alert fatigue. And also the really hairy problems where, the connections are very hard to find. So we should be able to do that with AI.
So that is a really difficult problem to solve, and there's quite a bit going on there. If you had to pick the one thing you're most excited about solving, what would that be?
Yeah, for sure. I think the one thing that I'm really excited about solving is kind of memories and learning from experience. So one thing, the idea is that, as Bits does investigations, you can kind of teach Bits when things went well and kind of tell it when it didn't, so that it's continuously learning. So it kind of creates this virtuous cycle. So as you interact with Bits, it's learning more about your systems and learning more specifically how your system's set up. So for example, if your system is not really focused around service, but around something like account ID or cluster, it can start to learn about that and be able to help you investigate things better.
So it's going in with a bunch of context right from the beginning.
Absolutely.
Which certainly helps at 3 a.m. So I would say we're living in an agentic world at this point. There are agents pretty much everywhere, but it's a new space. So because of that, it's a little bit novel. What's it like building an agent from scratch?
Yeah, absolutely. So building like an agentic like SRE is obviously a lofty goal, because if you think about it, we have to understand the contributing factors for every type of root cause that's out there. So in the beginning, it was a lot of like sifting through cases to understand what was going on. We obviously started small, so we started just kind of tackling the alerts that our team directly affected, but we knew this wasn't going to scale for all the different problems that our customers were facing. So what we had to do next is we kind of made an ambitious evaluation data set that we could evaluate Bits' performance against with a massive number of cases. And what we did was we categorized those cases so that our team can hill climb on the ones that impacted them the most. And for the really tricky problems, we had to make sure that our reasoning was always state of the art. So this meant that we had to make sure that we could easily experiment and swap in new agent architectures. It also meant staying on top of the literature to making sure that we're on the bleeding edge, because it's such a burgeoning field that there's new stuff coming out all the time in the AI community and the open source community. And we're always on top of the latest like LLM models. Finally, through the whole process, kind of like as a North Star, we worked really closely with design partners to make sure that what we were building actually was solving their problems.
Got it. It really is amazing how quickly state-of-the-art changes these days. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of agents. What would you say differentiates or sets apart Bits AI SRE from some of the other agents we're seeing?
The two things that really sets us apart from the other agents is the Datadog platform. So we have all your data, under one roof, and it's interconnected. So it really helps us be able to traverse that data as opposed to cobbling together, different integrations to pull them in. This actually gets really important when you think about things like data governance and RBAC, because you can because it's all under one roof, you can kind of set policies that Bits can look at, and also that people can look at from your data, your investigations. And the second big differentiator is our applied AI organization at Datadog. These folks have been bathing in the problems for years, and they've been developing models. And I think our partnership with them is really something that the other agents really don't have. I think that we've incorporated all these applied AI models and techniques in the agent along with all the LLMs. And it's really made a difference.
That applied AI team really is doing amazing work, from Toto to just how they're helping engineers on a daily basis at Datadog think differently. It's been really great to work with them. So now that we have a good idea of where Bits AI is today, where do you see it going tomorrow?
So the next thing is we want to extend Bits' investigative capabilities beyond alerts. So for example, making ad hoc prompts like what's the health of my service, or have it running in the background during a long-running incident, so you can ask it questions and give it context. And the next frontier that we want to take Bits to is remediation. So imagine you discover that this alert was caused by a nil pointer. Maybe we can hook up with the dev agent to kind of recommend a code fix for it.
And I imagine the eventual end goal would be, I'm not even woken up at 3 a.m. I wake up when I would have normally woke up to just see that a problem happened, was solved, and I can verify from there that it was the correct one.
Exactly.
Super exciting times. So I know I'm super excited about Bits AI SRE, and I'm imagining after hearing this, so are viewers. Where can they go to learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. So I recommend check out our post on the Bits AI SRE on our blog for more information on how you can enable it on your account today.
Excellent. And we'll make sure to include a link to that post in the show notes for this episode. Tristan, thanks again for joining.
Thank you.
Here's a quick roundup of the new features that Datadog recently announced.
Instead of the issue going unnoticed and then eventually impacting customers, I instead get a Slack alert saying that the quoted prices are lower than expected, based not on manual checks, but on machine learning models trained on historical data that takes trends and seasonality into account. And to learn more, I enter Datadog. And within Datadog, I ask myself 3 questions. Number 1, is this real? Number 2, does it matter? And number 3, what can I do about it?
Kevin, thank you so much for joining. Really excited to talk to you about data observability, which is really a new focus area for Datadog. So you recently joined Datadog through the acquisition of Metaplane. So before we get to what you're doing now, can you tell us a little bit about Metaplane and what you were all doing over there?
Yeah, we founded Metaplane in 2019 to help companies trust the data that powers their businesses, whether it was analytics or automations or recently AI. And we helped hundreds of companies build this kind of trust. And technically, the field is called data observability. But over time, our customers began to call us the Datadog for data. And that was prescient because eventually, they kept asking us to build the integrations that Datadog had already built. the places that data comes from and it moves through. And at the same time, Datadog was in parallel being asked to build integrations into the tools that Metaplane supported, like Snowflake and Databricks. And ultimately, there's this divide that we see between software teams that produce data and data teams that transform and consume data. This divide is pretty painful. It gets in the way of using data as a real competitive advantage within companies and really remediating and preventing data issues to, when they start at all. And so eventually joining forces made sense. So we're continuing to sell Metaplane standalone. And at the same time, we're also rebuilding data observability on top of native Datadog capabilities.
Got it. Okay. So really breaking down a different silo, which is something that we're already pretty familiar with here at Datadog. So expanding on that a little bit for those that might not be as familiar with data and data observability, can you tell us a little bit about it and why you think it's increasingly important, especially now?
So data has been one of the first applications of software within businesses, where you can imagine like an IBM International Business Machines. It's companies want to understand how they're doing. But in the past few decades, we've seen data being used for operations and automations. In the past few years, for Gen AI applications. And companies are increasingly realizing that their competitive advantage most of the time is not in the model itself, but in the proprietary data that only they have. So on that side, we see that the stakes of data are higher than ever. And as such, the need to have trust in that data is higher than ever. Because it's no longer like a quarterly board report, which, yes, it is not a good look when it goes wrong. But when the data is being seen directly by a customer in real time, all of the time, you have to maintain that level of trust extremely high.
Yeah, and there's certainly been an explosion of data with all the Gen AI that's happening now. Yes. So now that we have a good idea what you were doing at Metaplane and a good idea of what data and data observability means to you, what are you building here?
What we're building here is we're taking the strength of a standalone data observability product, like Metaplane, where we would connect with a customer's warehouse. We would get the downstream dependencies, like, for example, data might be used in a BI application like Looker, maybe transformed in a tool like dbt and ingested with a tool like Fivetran. The problem was that by the time that we detected an issue within the data warehouse, often the damage was already done. So like, imagine we work at a restaurant, right? And yes, it's great if we can like test the food on the way to a customer's table. It's way better than giving a customer food poisoning, right? But ideally, we can test the food all along the supply chain, like in the kitchen and before the kitchen. And that's really where Datadog shines in this space, where instead of detecting for data issues when it lands before consumption, we can get visibility throughout the entire data lifecycle. Because Datadog already has integrations to like the thousands of applications that produce data and into the streams that move it, the jobs that transform it. And you can kind of think of Datadog data observability as the last mile, right? We have all the bridges between all these islands. Like, let's get it to the final destination of where data is being used.
So now that we know what you're building, curious, having come from a startup, how's it been building at Datadog?
It's been great. It's been great because, well, as we all know, Datadog has amazing infrastructure to handle huge volumes and velocities of incoming data, whether it's metrics or events. So the infrastructure is definitely there. What's been interesting is what isn't already at Datadog. But because Datadog is focused on serving one type of persona, the software engineer, the SRE, and data observability, one of the challenges is serving a different type of persona, like a data engineer, an analytics engineer. Yep. And there's new concepts, right? There's the concept of lineage, which is you have a piece of data, where does it come from? It doesn't just appear, it's used in an AI application, and it means that at the origin, some human put it in or some machine put it in, and it's being transformed all along the way. That dependency graph, or what we call lineage, there wasn't actually a really good way to represent that within Datadog, right? We have traces for code dependencies. We didn't have the lineage for data dependencies. So whether it's lineage or having machine learning models that are tailored to the data quality domain, there's an interesting, I guess, question that we always have to grapple with as we're rebuilding, which is, what can we build on top of? What should we bring over? And what should we build from scratch? The good thing is that, right, technology is technology. The team here is, for lack of a better word, like they're cracked. They're extremely good. We'll figure it out. But it really comes down to the people. I think there's a really big cultural fit of wanting to solve customers' problems by any means necessary. And I think that's part of why the acquisition makes sense. It's part of why I'm really excited for what we do with data observability to solve problems for data engineers, both within data quality and beyond it. But that's to come.
Awesome. You just gave a talk at a meetup for DBT about open lineage and the concept of lineage. And as someone with more of an SRE background, I learned a lot. It was an amazing talk, and I'm even more excited now than I was before that. So speaking of excited, curious, what are you most excited about next?
Well, you mentioned open lineage. That's actually something that I was not super familiar with before coming to Datadog. And the fact that so let's start from the problem, which is that lineage is this logical dependency graph. And if any one piece is missing, it's so much less valuable than it could be, right? You're driving across the Florida Keys, right? You're crossing 4 bridges, then you had to take a ferry and then take 4 more bridges. I'd rather drive across the whole way. And integrating with every system that a customer has is extremely difficult. Yes, we're building a lot of native great integrations, but we need a way for them to send data over to us. It could be a more niche system. It could be something that's totally in-house. So they can send it over to us with an open source standard and implementation called Open Lineage. And our backend is completely Open Lineage compatible. So they can send those events to us. And that's what I'm very excited about, both for data observability, because we can use that lineage to help say, hey, you may want to monitor this table because it's being used all over the place. It's being used in dashboards and automations and large language models. We can also use it for analyzing downstream impact, right? Like, this table breaks. You should get on that, and for trying to figure out root cause. That's within data observability. There's a lot that we can do with the lineage outside of data observability, like preventing issues from happening in the first place with data contracts and within your CI/CD pipelines. Work that we can do with data discovery, but that's to come.
Sounds like there is a lot to tackle. So really appreciate you joining. Really excited to see what the team does next, and stay tuned for more about Datadog data observability.
Great to be here, and thank you.
A special thanks to Tristan and Kevin for chatting with me today. Before we go, we want to share a short video showcasing one of our latest products, AI Voice Interface, which helps you speed up incident response. Be sure to stick around for that. We'll see you next month.
Hey, Shah. Just calling to inform you about a critical latency alert on checkouts. I can acknowledge it and share more details with you.
Yeah.
Want me to do that?
Let's go ahead and act that.
Sure thing. The P99 latency on checkouts has increased from 900 milliseconds to 5.5 seconds, starting about 5 minutes ago. I've acknowledged the alert, so it won't escalate any further. I also have the linked runbook handy. Would you like me to share the suggested next step?
Yeah, let's get the first step. And could we also post to Slack in the checkout channel that's going on?
Got it. I've posted to Slack in #checkoutops. The suggested next step is to look at the upstream payments API for any latency or errors. Want me to pull that information for you?
Yeah, let's grab that.
The error rate for the payments API has climbed to 8%. It seems there was a deploy to the payments API shortly before our monitor went off. I can pull the next few steps from the runbook.
I think I know what we have to move forward.
No worries. Feel free to reach out if you need another pair of eyes. Let me know if there's anything else I can assist with.
Cool. Thank you. Bye.